The last rays of sunlight filtered through the dusty windows of Mason Gallery, casting long shadows across the empty exhibition space. I stood there, breathing in the familiar scent of oil paint and aged wood, trying to process the events of the past 24 hours. My name is Emma Mason, and yesterday, I inherited what my family considered their greatest disappointment: a failing art gallery in downtown Boston. The lawyer's office still felt vivid in my memory. The heavy mahogany desk, the ticking grandfather clock, and my brother Marcus's smugly expensive cologne filling the air. Our parents' reading should have been a somber affair, but Marcus couldn't contain his triumph as Mr. Patterson read out the terms. To our son Marcus Mason, we leave the sum of $50 million, our Hampton estate, and controlling interest in Mason Industries. Mr. Patterson's voice had been clinical, detached. To our daughter Emma, we leave Mason Gallery and its contents. Marcus had actually laughed out loud. Finally, Dad always said you get exactly what you deserved, Emma. I can still see his perfectly tailored suit, his Italian leather shoes, the way he lounged in his chair like he owned the room. In many ways, he now did. The gallery's been losing money for years, he continued, examining his manicured nails. But hey, at least you'll have plenty of dust to keep you company. Maybe you can sell pencil sketches to tourists. The thing is, Marcus wasn't wrong about the gallery's financial situation. Mason Gallery had been struggling for the past decade. What had once been Boston's premier showcase for emerging artists had gradually declined into a barely breaking-even operation that most serious collectors ignored. But what Marcus didn't understand, what my parents never understood, was that I had always seen something in this place that they missed. I grew up in these halls, spending countless afternoons with my grandfather, Theo Mason, the gallery's founder. While my parents were busy grooming Marcus for the family business and my mother was planning his path to an MBA, Grandpa Theo taught me about art. Real art. Not just the price tags and investment potential that my parents fixated on, but the soul behind each piece. Emma, my dear, he would say, his eyes twinkling behind wire-rimmed glasses, remember that true value isn't always visible at first glance. Sometimes the greatest treasures hide in plain sight, waiting for the right person to discover them. Those words echoed in my mind now as I walked through the gallery's main hall. The space was beautiful, even in its current state. Soaring ceilings, classic crown molding, and huge windows that, when clean, could flood the room with natural light. But years of minimal maintenance had taken their toll. The hardwood floors needed refinishing, the walls cried out for fresh paint, and half the track lighting had burned out. I reached the back office, my footsteps echoing in the silence. This had been my grandfather's sanctuary, though my parents had eventually converted it into a sterile storage space. Filing cabinets lined the walls, and a layer of dust covered everything. But underneath it all, I could still feel Grandpa Theo's presence. Running my fingers along his old desk, now relegated to a corner and piled with boxes, I remembered the stories he used to tell me about the gallery's early days. How he built it from nothing in the 1960s, turning it into a haven for artists who would later become legends. There were whispers that he had amassed an incredible private collection over the years, but after his death 15 years ago, nothing extraordinary was ever found. My parents had searched, of course. They spent months combing through the gallery, convinced that Grandpa Theo had hidden away masterpieces worth millions. They hired experts, brought in appraisers, even had the walls scanned for hidden spaces. They found nothing but the gallery's regular inventory. Decent pieces, but nothing that would make headlines. Eventually, they gave up. The gallery became an afterthought, a tax write-off. They kept running out of some lingering sense of obligation to Grandpa Theo's memory. They focused on Mason Industries instead, grooming Marcus to take over the family's real legacy, while I studied art history and worked as a curator at smaller museums. A sudden draft made me shiver, pulling me back to the present. Night had fallen while I was lost in memories, and the gallery felt different in the darkness. The shapes of sculptures threw strange shadows on the walls, and the few paintings still on display seemed to watch me with knowing eyes. I was about to leave when something caught my attention, a slight unevenness in the floorboards near Grandpa Theo's desk that I had never noticed before. Kneeling down, I ran my hands over the wood. There was definitely something off about the pattern, a subtle irregularity that seemed intentional rather than the result of age. My heart started beating faster as I remembered another of Grandpa Theo's favorite sayings. The best hiding place is one that looks like it's trying to hide something else. I spent the next hour examining every inch of that floor and the surrounding area. Just when I was about to give up, my fingers found it. A tiny lever disguised as a knot in the wood. With trembling hands, I pulled it. The mechanism was so well crafted that it barely made a sound. A small section of the floorboards slid aside, revealing a narrow space underneath. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its pages yellow with age, and a single key that looked far older than the gallery itself. The journal was my grandfather's. I recognized his distinctive handwriting immediately, but it wasn't his usual flowing script. These notes were hurried, almost frantic, filled with sketches and calculations and what looked like coded messages. One page caught my eye. At the top, in bold letters, it read, "The True Collection, for Emma's eyes only." My hands shook as I turned the page, but before I could read further, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Marcus. "Meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Time to discuss selling that dusty gallery of yours. I already have buyers interested in the building." I looked at the journal in my hands, then back at the message. Marcus had no idea what I just found, and for now, that was exactly how I wanted to keep it. I carefully returned the journal and key to their hiding place, making sure the floor panel was securely closed. Walking out of the gallery that night, I felt different. The weight of my seemingly worthless inheritance had transformed into something else: anticipation. My grandfather had left me more than just a struggling gallery. He'd left me a mystery. And tomorrow, while Marcus would be planning to strip this place for parts, I would begin to uncover what Grandpa Theo had hidden away all those years ago. I locked the gallery's front door, the key feeling more significant in my hand than ever before. Looking up at the building's elegant facade, I smiled, remembering Grandpa Theo's words one last time. "Patience, Emma. The best stories take time to unfold." He was right. This was just the beginning. I arrived at the gallery early the next morning, well before my 9 a.m. meeting with Marcus. The sunrise painted the empty halls in shades of gold, but I barely noticed. My mind was focused on one thing: the hidden compartment and its contents. Kneeling by Grandpa Theo's old desk, I triggered the secret mechanism again. The journal and key felt heavier now, weighted with possibility. Finding a quiet corner, I began to read. "My dearest Emma," the first page began, "if you're reading this, you've already proven you have the patience and perception I always saw in you. What I'm about to share must remain our secret. The true legacy of Mason Gallery isn't in its walls, but below them." My heart raced as I turned the pages. The journal detailed an incredible story that spanned decades. Grandpa Theo hadn't just been a gallery owner. He'd been part of a network of art preservationists working to protect masterpieces during troubled times. The gallery's basement, it seemed, held more than just storage. A series of detailed drawings showed a complex system of hidden rooms beneath the main floor. According to the journal, Grandpa Theo had spent years secretly modifying the building's original foundation, creating a climate-controlled vault that no one else knew existed. "The key," he wrote, "opens more than just a door. It opens a legacy I've spent my life building. But be careful, Emma. Others have searched for this collection, and not all of them have honest intentions." A sharp knock at the front door made me jump. Marcus stood outside, his expression impatient. I quickly hid the journal and composed myself before letting him in. "Well, if it isn't the curator of dust," he smirked, striding past me. "I brought some potential buyers. They're interested in turning this place into luxury condos." Behind him stood two men in expensive suits, developers, by the look of them. They immediately began discussing load-bearing walls and square footage, treating the gallery's history like an inconvenience to be demolished. The basement would make excellent parking space, one of them said, consulting his tablet. "According to the original plans, it's mostly unused." I felt a chill. If they started digging around down there. "The gallery isn't for sale," I said firmly. Marcus's face darkened. "Don't be ridiculous, Emma. This place is worthless as an art gallery. You can barely pay the utilities." I said no. "Look," Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I know you had some sentimental attachment to Grandpa's little hobby, but it's time to grow up. Take the money and walk away." I met his gaze steadily. "Like you did, taking the millions while contributing nothing." His face flushed red. "I earned my inheritance by learning the business, not wasting time listening to an old man's fairy tales about art. Get out." My voice was quiet but firm. "All of you. You're making a mistake," Marcus warned as I ushered them toward the door. "I'm trying to help you." "I don't need your kind of help." After they left, I leaned against the wall, my heart pounding. Marcus wouldn't give up easily. He never did. I needed to work fast. Returning to the journal, I studied the basement plans carefully. The entrance to the vault, according to Grandpa Theo's notes, was hidden behind a false wall in the basement's northwest corner. The key would activate a mechanism, but only if used correctly. Taking a deep breath, I descended the basement stairs. The space was exactly as I remembered. Rows of metal shelving holding wrapped paintings and sculptures, old exhibition materials, and decades of paperwork. But now I saw it with new eyes. Following the journal's instructions, I made my way to the northwest corner. At first glance, it looked solid, bare concrete walls meeting at a right angle. But when I ran my fingers along the surface, I felt subtle irregularities in the pattern. The key fit perfectly into what appeared to be a small crack in the concrete. With trembling hands, I turned it according to the sequence described in the journal: 3/4 right, 1/4 left, then right again. For a moment, nothing happened. Then I heard it. A soft click followed by the whisper of hidden machinery. The false wall swung inward silently, revealing a steel door with a sophisticated electronic keypad. The journal had prepared me for this too. The code was based on a significant date, the day Grandpa Theo first opened the gallery, but written in a specific format. I entered the numbers carefully. 19,650,412. The door opened with a gentle hiss, and climate-controlled air washed over me. Motion-activated lights flickered on, illuminating a sight that took my breath away. The vault was massive, far larger than should have been possible. Rows of carefully preserved paintings lined the walls, each one protected in a custom-designed case. Sculptures stood on pedestals, their forms casting intricate shadows. Display cases held smaller pieces, rare manuscripts, ancient artifacts, and pieces I recognized from my art history studies, but had never expected to see in person. In the center of the room stood a simple desk with a letter placed precisely in the middle. With shaking hands, I opened it. My dearest Emma, welcome to the True Mason Gallery. What you see around you is the work of a lifetime. Not just mine, but the efforts of countless others who believed in preserving beauty and history. Each piece here has a story, and now those stories are yours to protect. You'll find full documentation for every item in the vault, their provenance, their history, and most importantly, their rightful owners. Some of these pieces were entrusted to me for safekeeping during difficult times. Others were rescued from those who would have destroyed them for profit or politics. This collection isn't meant to be sold or displayed for prestige. It exists to be protected until the right time comes for each piece to return home. I've chosen you for this task because you understand that art isn't about price tags or status. It's about preserving the thread of human creativity that connects us all. In the rear of the vault, you'll find a smaller room. That collection is different. Pieces I acquired legally over the years, carefully authenticated and documented. Those belong to you now, to do with as you see fit. They should provide more than enough resources to maintain both the gallery and the vault's mission. Be careful, be patient, and above all, be true to the responsibility you now hold. All my love, Grandpa Theo. I spent hours in the vault, examining each piece with wonder. The collection was staggering. Works by masters I'd only read about, pieces thought lost to history, and others whose existence had only been rumored. In the private collection Grandpa Theo had mentioned, I found dozens of carefully selected works by artists whose values had skyrocketed over the decades. Even a conservative estimate put their worth well over $100 million. But it wasn't the money that brought tears to my eyes. It was the trust my grandfather had placed in me, the legacy he prepared me for all those years ago without my knowing it. A notification on my phone broke the spell. Multiple missed calls from Marcus and a text. This isn't over. You're making a huge mistake. I looked around the vault, at the priceless collection my brother would have sold without a second thought, and smiled. For the first time since inheriting the gallery, I felt completely certain of my path forward. Carefully securing the vault, I headed back upstairs. There was work to be done. The gallery needed renovation, security needed upgrading, and I had a legacy to protect. Marcus was right about one thing. This wasn't over. But he had no idea what he was really fighting against. While he plotted to seize what he thought was a worthless building, I was now the guardian of something far more valuable than money could measure. Looking up at the gallery's walls, I whispered, "Thank you, Grandpa Theo. I won't let you down." The next few weeks passed in a blur of activity. I hired contractors to restore the gallery's original features, but only after having them sign ironclad confidentiality agreements. The basement remained strictly off-limits, listed as undergoing environmental assessment to deter curious eyes. I spent my nights studying Grandpa Theo's journal, learning the stories behind each piece in the vault. Some had been rescued from Nazi looting during World War II, others from more recent conflicts. Each artwork had its own detailed file, including documentation about its rightful owners and the circumstances that had brought it into my grandfather's care. But Marcus, true to his word, wasn't giving up. First came the legal threats. A thick envelope arrived from his lawyers, claiming that the gallery's deteriorated condition constituted negligent management of family assets, and demanding an immediate sale. I handed it to my own attorney, a specialist in art law whom I'd quietly retained using funds from selling just one minor piece from my grandfather's personal collection. Then came the financial pressure. Marcus used his connections to interfere with the gallery's insurance, its utility services, even its property tax assessment. Each time, I countered his moves using resources he didn't know I had. The turning point came on a rainy Tuesday morning. I arrived at the gallery to find Marcus waiting with two men I didn't recognize. "These gentlemen are from the Boston Historical Society," he said, his smile sharp as a razor. "They're very interested in examining the building's original foundation. Apparently, there are concerns about structural integrity." I knew instantly they weren't from any historical society. The way they carried themselves, the subtle bulges under their jackets. These were private investigators, or worse. "The gallery is closed for renovations," I said firmly. "Any inspections need to be scheduled through proper channels." One of the men stepped forward. "We have authorization to leave." I cut him off, "or I'll call the actual authorities." After they left, Marcus lingered. "What are you hiding, Emma? There's something in this building worth protecting, isn't there? Something Grandpa Theo left behind." "The only thing I'm protecting is this gallery's future," I replied. "Why can't you accept that?" His expression darkened. "Because I know you. You were always his favorite, always listening to his stories. He must have told you something, left you some clue. The clue was in plain sight, Marcus. You just never cared enough to look." That night, I knew I had to accelerate my plans. Marcus was getting desperate, and desperate people make dangerous choices. I spent hours in the vault, carefully documenting everything. Then I made 3 phone calls, one to an old friend at the FBI's art crime team, one to a contact at Interpol, and one to the world's leading expert in art repatriation. 2 days later, Marcus made his move. I was working late when I heard the basement door open. Security cameras showed 3 men in dark clothing making their way downstairs. Marcus wasn't with them, but I had no doubt who had sent them. Calmly, I pressed the silent alarm. Not the gallery's regular system, but a special one I'd had installed that connected directly to law enforcement. Then I made my way to the basement. The men were already at the northwest corner, examining the wall with professional equipment. They'd barely glanced at me when I entered. "Looking for something?" I asked. "Lady, just walk away." One of them growled. "This doesn't concern you." "Actually," I smiled, "it concerns me very much. So do the federal agents who just surrounded the building." As if on cue, voices boomed from above. "FBI. This is a federal art crimes investigation. Everyone remain where you are." What followed was a blur of activity. The would-be thieves were arrested. Marcus, tracked through their phones, was picked up at his home. The search warrants revealed everything: his hired thugs, his plans for the gallery, even his connections to certain unscrupulous collectors who trafficked in stolen art. But the real surprise came the next morning. I had arranged for a special meeting at the gallery. Present were representatives from museums and cultural institutions around the world, along with officials from various governments. Together, we descended into the vault. Their gasps echoed off the walls as the lights revealed the collection. Tears flowed as long-lost masterpieces were rediscovered. Museum directors hugged each other as pieces thought destroyed were found perfectly preserved. I shared everything: Grandpa Theo's documentation, his detailed records, the stories of how each piece had come into his care. Over the next year, we would work together to repatriate every artwork to its rightful place, earning the gallery international recognition, not for what it possessed, but for what it returned. Marcus watched it all unfold from behind bars, his reputation and freedom lost to his own greed. The evidence found in his home had implicated him in other art trafficking schemes, ensuring he'd have plenty of time to reflect on his choices. As for the gallery itself, I used part of Grandpa Theo's personal collection to establish a foundation dedicated to protecting and preserving art during times of conflict. The gallery became a center for education and advocacy, teaching future generations about the importance of cultural heritage. 1 year to the day after discovering the vault, I stood in the newly renovated main hall. The space was filled with light, the original architectural details restored to their former glory. A special exhibition was opening, not of precious masterpieces, but of works by emerging local artists, just as Grandpa Theo had showcased when he first opened the gallery. In my office, once Grandpa Theo's sanctuary, I keep 2 things on my desk. The first is his journal, a reminder of the legacy he entrusted to me. The second is a small news clipping from the day Marcus was sentenced, not out of spite, but as a reminder that true value isn't found in what you can take, but in what you choose to protect. The gallery still bears the Mason name, but it stands for something different now. Not just a family legacy, but a commitment to preserving art for future generations. Every day, as I walk through these halls, I feel Grandpa Theo's presence, and I know he would be proud. Sometimes, late in the evening when the gallery is quiet, I think about that moment when I first found the hidden compartment in the floor. How close I came to giving up, to letting Marcus turn this place into just another luxury development. But Grandpa Theo had taught me well. The greatest treasures aren't always visible at first glance, and some things are worth far more than their market value. The vault beneath the gallery is empty now, its contents returned to their rightful homes around the world. But the space remains, ready if ever needed again, a secret chamber waiting to protect the next piece of history that needs saving. And sometimes, when young artists visit the gallery, their eyes shining with the same passion I once saw in Grandpa Theo's, I share with them his favorite saying: true value isn't always visible at first glance. Sometimes the greatest treasures hide in plain sight, waiting for the right person to discover them. They never know that I'm not just talking about art. The gallery that everyone thought was worthless turned out to be priceless, not because of what it contained, but because of what it stood for: a legacy of protection, preservation, and the understanding that some things are worth more than all the millions in the world. Marcus may have gotten the money in our parents' will, but I got something far more valuable: a purpose, a mission, and the chance to prove that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, but doing what's right. The Mason Gallery stands tall in downtown Boston, its windows gleaming in the sunlight. It's no longer the dusty, failing space my brother mocked. It's a beacon of hope, a guardian of culture, and a testament to the fact that true worth often lies far deeper than the surface. And me? I'm no longer just Emma Mason, the disappointment who got the worthless inheritance. I'm the protector of a legacy that spans generations, the keeper of a tradition that values preservation over profit, and the proof that sometimes the best things in life really do come covered in dust, if you just know where to look.